Listen, your clean water doesn't vanish after the apocalypse. It betrays you. It keeps the same clear look, the same innocent taste, and then it quietly wrecks your gut, your kidneys, your decision-making, and your ability to move. That's what kills people. Not thirst first, false confidence first. The moment the grid goes unstable, the entire modern water miracle turns into a slow-motion failure chain. Your city water works because of three things you never see: constant pressure, constant disinfection, and constant monitoring. When power dies, pressure is the first domino. And once pressure drops, your pipes stop being a sealed delivery system and start becoming a straw. In water engineering, there's a brutal concept called negative pressure intrusion. When pressure inside the pipe falls below the pressure outside it, anything around that pipe can get pulled in through cracks, joints, tiny failures that existed for years but didn't matter until now. Soil water, sewer leakage, animal waste, chemical runoff. You can have water that looks like bottled spring water and it's still a biological weapon. And here's the part that makes people angry. The more modern your neighborhood is, the more fragile your water is. Because modern systems are optimized, not rugged, they assume repairs happen fast. They assume chlorine injection is constant. They assume staff show up after collapse. The operators don't vanish because they're lazy. They vanish because their families are thirsty too. So chlorination stops, monitoring stops, pressure management stops, and the water becomes not immediately deadly, which is the most dangerous category of all. If water killed you in 5 minutes, you'd learn. But this stuff gives you a delay. It gives you time to make worse choices. Now let's talk about the first big lie: just boil it. Boiling is great for biological pathogens. It's a flamethrower for bacteria, protozoa, most viruses if done properly. But it does nothing to many dissolved chemicals. Not fuel components, not nitrates, not heavy metals. And it can actually make your situation worse by concentrating what doesn't evaporate. You reduce volume, you keep the toxins, you raise the dose. That's how you get the sickest people insisting they did everything right. So what happens to clean water after the apocalypse is it splits into two threats that people confuse: biological contamination and chemical contamination. Biological kills through dehydration and infection, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, weakness. Chemical kills through accumulation and organ damage, headaches, confusion, kidney strain, nervous system effects, long-term collapse. The terrifying part is you can treat one and ignore the other because your brain wants a simple enemy: germs, dirt. Reality says it's both. And the cleanest looking water can be the worst. Your tap water in the first 24 to 72 hours can be a trap for another reason: backflow. When pumps fail and pressure drops, water that normally flows one direction can reverse. If people are filling bathtubs, draining heaters, opening hydrants, you're creating chaotic pressure zones. Add broken backflow preventers and now you can pull contaminated water from buildings, sprinkler systems, industrial loops, and stagnant sections of mainline. The system becomes a blender. You don't know what you're drinking because the network isn't a network anymore. It's random connected storage. Here's another thing nobody tells you. Even if the source water is clean, the distribution becomes unsafe. Think about biofilm. Inside pipes, microbes build slimy protective layers. Normally chlorination keeps that suppressed. Without disinfectant, biofilms wake up like they just got parole. They shed bacteria into the flow. That's why water from a dead system can smell off days later. But by the time it smells, you already took the risk. So if you're surviving, your first insight is timing. The safest water is the water you stored before the panic, because it's uncontaminated by system failure and human activity. After that, your second insight is geography. Water near dense human activity degrades fastest because humans turn water sources into trash and latrines without meaning to. Camps form near rivers, trash piles grow, waste spreads. Water doesn't become scarce first, it becomes socially poisoned first. Now let's get tactical, because you asked for a deep analysis, not motivational wallpaper. You need to start thinking like you're building a water pipeline with layers, not like you're finding water. Layer 1 is source selection. This is where most people fail because they choose convenience. In a collapse, The closest water is usually the most contaminated. Downstream river water near a city? That's a chemical soup. Water near roads? Fuel and heavy metals. Water near farms? Nitrates and pesticides. Stagnant ponds? Protozoa and bacteria festivals. You want moving water from higher elevation away from human density. Not because it's magical, but because contamination follows gravity and people. Layer 2 is prefiltration. Remove sediment before anything else. Sediment isn't just gross, it's a shield that protects microbes and clogs everything. If you run muddy water through a good filter, you can ruin the filter and still not get safe water. Settling, decanting, cloth filtering, sand pre-filter. Boring steps that save lives because physics is boring and deadly. Particles fall with time and surface area. You use gravity to do free work. Layer 3 is biological kill or removal. This is where your method depends on what you have and how mobile you are. Boiling works, but it burns fuel and broadcasts your presence. Chemical disinfection works, but it demands correct dosage and contact time. Too little and you drink pathogens. Too much and you drink irritants. Filtration works, but only if you understand what your filter actually stops. A lot of backpack filters stop bacteria and protozoa, not viruses. Viruses are smaller. In areas with human sewage contamination, viruses matter. I filtered it confidence can be fatal if your filter isn't rated for what's actually in the water. Layer 4 is chemical reduction. This is the step preppers love to ignore because it's not dramatic. Activated carbon helps with taste and some organics, and it can reduce some chemicals. But it's not a universal antidote. It won't save you from everything industrial. Reverse osmosis is powerful but maintenance heavy. Distillation can remove many contaminants, but it's slow, fuel hungry, and easy to recontaminate. The principle you must remember is this: if you suspect chemical contamination, the safest decision is often to change sources, not treat harder. Treatment can't always outrun the chemistry of a polluted watershed. Layer 5 is storage discipline. Because even if you make safe water, you can ruin it by being sloppy. Dirty hands, open containers, cross-contamination from raw water vessels. After collapse, water sickness often comes from your own workflow. Keep raw water and treated water separate like they're two different religions. Label, cap, don't dip, don't, just one sip. That's how you end up blaming the river when the real enemy was your cup. Here's the last insight of part 1. After the apocalypse, clean water becomes a security problem. Water draws people, people draw trouble. A loud filtration setup, a visible boiling station, frequent trips to a known source, those are signals. If you want to live, your water plan has to include stealth. That's not paranoia, that's just how humans behave when biology gets desperate. Here's the part that flips your thinking upside down. Because after the apocalypse, clean water stops being a thing and becomes a behavior. And people who don't understand that die while standing next to a river. Once the initial shock phase passes, water doesn't suddenly get safer. It gets more deceptive. Human activity spreads contamination outward in slow waves. Abandoned factories don't shut down cleanly, they leak lubricants, solvents, acids, vehicles rot, batteries rupture, underground storage tanks corrode. Rain doesn't wash danger away, it transports it. Gravity becomes your enemy. Every storm pulls yesterday's civilization downhill into today's drinking source. This is why rivers become death corridors. Flowing water feels alive, trustworthy. But flow equals accumulation. Everything upstream eventually introduces itself downstream. And after collapse, upstream means every broken thing humans ever built. Clear water becomes a liar with excellent PR. Now let's talk about rainwater. Because this is where a lot of smart people make dumb decisions. Rain looks pure, but modern air is not. After collapse, the atmosphere doesn't reset, it settles. Particulates, industrial residue, combustion byproducts, microplastics hang around longer because nobody is filtering emissions anymore. The first rains after collapse are often the most chemically aggressive. They strip the sky and deliver it straight into your collection surface. Collection method matters more than collection enthusiasm. Roof runoff is contaminated by bird droppings, decaying organic matter, roofing materials, sealants, dust that's been accumulating for years. Drinking rainwater straight from a tarp without treatment isn't primitive wisdom. It's roulette. The reason layered treatment works is because each layer addresses a different failure mode. Sediment removal reduces microbial shelter. Biological kill reduces infection. Adsorption reduces chemical load. Skip one, and the system doesn't forgive you. Here's a biological truth most people underestimate. Dehydration is slow, but waterborne illness is fast and compounding. Diarrhea strips fluids and electrolytes. Vomiting prevents intake. Fever increases water demand. So contaminated water doesn't just fail to hydrate you, it actively accelerates your collapse. People don't die because they couldn't find water. They die because the water they found turned their body against itself. Now let's break a sacred survival myth. If animals drink it, it's safe. No. Animals tolerate pathogens humans don't. Some animals can drink water that would wreck you for weeks. What animals are good at is pattern detection. If animals avoid a source consistently, that's a red flag. If insects die clustered in certain areas, that's chemistry talking. If vegetation downstream looks stressed while upstream thrives, that's contamination moving. Nature whispers. Panic drowns it out. This is where real survival starts looking boring. You don't chase water. You manage demand. The less you sweat, the less you drink, the less you move at peak heat, the less water you burn. You time activity to biology, not clocks. Your body is a water battery. How fast you drain it matters more than how much you carry. People obsessed with finding water often ignore the faster win, needing less. Let's talk about distillation, because it sounds like the ultimate solution. And it can be, but only when you understand its limits. Distillation removes most biological and many chemical contaminants by phase change. But it costs energy. A lot of it. Solar stills produce laughably small volumes unless you're patient and stationary. Fire-based distillation burns fuel and attracts attention. And distilled water lacks minerals. Drink it exclusively and your electrolytes drift. Your muscles cramp. Your heart rhythm becomes unreliable. Clean water without minerals becomes a long-term problem masquerading as a solution. That's why survivors who last don't chase purity, they chase balance. They mix sources. They supplement minerals. They treat water like food, something with nutritional consequences, not just volume. Another uncomfortable reality, after collapse, water sources become territorial. Whoever controls the least contaminated source controls movement. That's why conflict clusters around wells, springs, and upstream access. You don't need to be violent to understand violence. You just need to understand scarcity. If your water plan requires repeated visible trips, you've already failed the security equation. This is where stealth enters hydration, quiet collection, irregular timing, concealed storage, no visible steam columns, no routine. Humans are pattern hunters. Don't become a pattern. Now let's talk about the psychological trap. Because this kills more people than bacteria. Familiarity bias. You drank from that stream last week and survived. So you trust it today. But contamination isn't static. One dead animal upstream changes everything. One rainfall changes everything. One group setting up camp changes everything. Safe yesterday means nothing today. Water safety after collapse is a continuous assessment, not a checkbox. This is why the best survivalists sound paranoid until they're the only ones left standing. They assume every source is compromised until proven otherwise, and proven means layered treatment. Observation and restraint. They don't drink because they're thirsty. They drink because the system says it's time. Here's the final truth I want burned into your head, after the apocalypse. Clean water is no longer guaranteed by infrastructure. It's guaranteed by discipline. Discipline to wait. Discipline to treat. Discipline to walk away from a bad source even when you're tired and scared. The water doesn't care about your confidence. Physics doesn't care about your optimism. Biology doesn't care about your plans. Thirst makes you desperate. Desperation makes you sloppy. Sloppy makes you sick. And sickness, in a collapsed world, is a countdown timer you can't see. If you're still listening, good. Most people would have tuned out already. That alone puts you ahead of the curve.